One of the problems that I used to have is that I'm a perfectionist. I want everything done perfect, and if I don't like things, I'm jumping in and I will do it myself. But that's what keeps you away from becoming a manager. What you need to do is, when you're a manager, you need to do it with the help of others. You have a team to do that. And for that, you need to trust your team. You need to empower your team. You need to develop your team. And here the fun part comes again, which I face a lot in Nigeria and in other circumstances, is that people, they are so scared of giving out their...
Thank you for listening to the podcast thus far. 2024, big year ahead. The one favor I would ask, if you can, if you're enjoying what you're listening to, is to press the follow and subscribe button on whatever media platform you listen to us, as it helps us grow our network and grow the podcast. So thank you and enjoy the podcast today.
I'm Wiam Kamil, Principal Consultant at Alchemy Search, the only finance and tax experts in the UAE. And I'm joined today by Oleksandr Polishchuk. Oleg is from the Ukraine, and he currently occupies a CFO role in the subcluster of the government UAE defense company. Interestingly, he became a CFO at the age of 34 and holds an EMBA degree from INSEAD and is also a member of ACCA. Oleg, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you very much. How are you?
Yeah, very good. We've been speaking about doing this for a while.
Yes, and here we are.
Yeah, here we are. And I think today's episode is going to be a little bit different from the stuff that we've released in the past in our podcasts. And we've been working on it for a while because I think it's a very interesting topic, and hopefully we get that across as well.
That's put a little bit of a pressure on me, but I hope so. And by the way, thank you for having me here as well. That's an honor for me, and I would love to have this discussion with you.
Of course. I think that we've had a lot of discussions in the past, and I think your background has been super interesting. From how things just developed in your career and also your personal life, with how, your movements across different countries and, how all of that happened. It's quite unusual, to say the least. I think that's what interested me at the start whenever we were speaking, and I thought, there could be a lot of discussions that we could talk about. So, I think today's episode is going to be interesting for a lot of people because, we are going to be touching on some points around what certain skills are necessary for people to make that next step in their career. Sometimes a lot of people feel stuck, and it feels like, there's just one thing that maybe they can change or they can do that can get them out of their comfort zone that, can make all the difference in their career. And I think that's, what I want to make sure people understand what that is. And we'll be going over all of that during our episode, specifically about how finance people can become the next CFO, or what's missing for them to become the next CFO. We will try to answer that question. So let's just start with, from the beginning, tell me about how everything started for you, maybe your first job, or from wherever you would like to start from.
As you mentioned, I'm from Ukraine, and I actually started not as a finance. I finished my bartender school, all the classes for mixology and flaring, throwing bottles, which gave me a job in the nightclub, one of the best nightclubs in Kiev, in Ukraine. That was the beginning. And after that, I was pretty much semi-professional freestyle skier, being sponsored by one of the brands, which was also far away from finance as such. But yeah, I think that was the start. However, I realized that that's not exactly what I want. And probably that was the first bold move is, okay, what do I do next? And as many probably in finance, joined consulting, Big Four, put a cap for myself. I said I will spend there maximum 2 years. I worked in Deloitte, but as many people, already guests of your podcast, were mentioning the same, that I think that's an incredible start of a career for anyone, because you build up knowledge capital, which we're going to talk about over the podcast, which is very important in the early stage of your career. Being a young professional, there is not much of other things that you possess that can really prove yourself or in front of other people who are more senior and have more experience, at least on the paper. So that that was a start of the career, which gave quite a big boost. And obviously, I decided that I have to move out from consulting. And the earlier you move, the easier it is, because once you are staying there for quite some time, then people find it quite difficult to move and change. So I made a move to the industry. It was oil and gas exploration and development group of companies in Ukraine, where I was just a IFRS specialist. And I was working with a team which were significantly more senior than me, like chief accountants. And here you go, I don't know, 21, 22-year-old guy teaching them how to do things differently. For all their life, they were doing stuff their way, and suddenly there's someone who is telling you what to do. And I think that's where the knowledge comes handy. So you can prove yourself by showing the value, but it's not only with your knowledge, it's also with empathy. You have to understand their feelings and how do they deal with you, and why would they listen to you, right? So I think that was always a challenge through the career, where I was kind of a younger guy who was expecting to get more in terms of the profession, career, etc. So that, I think, is a starting point. But to add to that, I think another important thing that worth mentioning here is the continuous education.
Were you always studying throughout this time, or?
This is exactly what I was trying to say, because the moment I finished my master degree in accounting and audit in Kiev, I started ACCA, which was compulsory in Deloitte. But after I left Deloitte, I continued that. And as your listeners may know, that takes like 14 exams, and it took me 3.5 years to get that certification. Which, again, in my opinion, and what I've been advised by my coaches early on, get as many papers as you can as early as you can, because if you don't have a paper, then people will ask, why don't you have it? And if you have a paper, then people will not say anything. They just take it as a granted. So that's something that I think is important.
I think we see it in a lot of processes as well in recruitment right now, right? So I always say to people, is a qualification like an ACCA, CPA, CMA, a deal breaker? For some people, for some companies, it is. If you don't have that qualification, you won't even get a chance to go for interview. Now, is that right? Is that wrong? Do I agree with it? I actually don't. I think that people can be competent. However, to make life easy for you, having that qualification opens so many doors, and you can get more opportunities to interview and to go. And then from there, it's not your qualification that carries you. It's you that carries you, right?
Spot on. I 100% agree with you. This exactly proves the point that I make. So if you don't have it, then, you may have a more difficult time. But if you have it, it doesn't give you, it's not a golden ticket. You have to deserve it, because you need to sell yourself. You need to show that you can add value, which not always is that straightforward. And that's where other skills, other than knowledge, come into play. But I think early on, this really gives you the toolkit that you can show and demonstrate to people around you that you know your stuff, and they at least will respect you for that. I'm not saying that automatically they will do that, but at least that's something that it's your base, right?
Would you, would you describe yourself through, especially at the beginning of your career or at the start of your career, be someone that, was outgoing? What would you describe yourself? Would you say that you were extroverted, or would you say that you were introverted? Because you spoke a lot about social interactions with the people that you were working with at the time, especially this oil and gas company. What would you describe yourself as?
In hindsight, doing my executive MBA with INSEAD, we've done a test, and I came up as a really strong introvert.
It doesn't show, by the way.
So what I'm trying to say with that is it is the skill that you can build. And being an introvert does not automatically mean that you are a guy that is locked inside yourself and cannot find a common language with people around you, right? There's just where do you get the energy from, right? So introverts, they recharge their batteries by being alone And extroverts, they recharge by talking to others. That's why they were struggling big time during COVID, for instance. For me, that was not a big deal. I have no problem. However, the need in communication and the need in getting along with people and being a social creature is kind of in our DNA anyway, because otherwise you'll probably get mad. But coming back to your question, I think even though I was an introvert, always, till now, I think, it was really important to me to make the connections, right? And as we call it, as I call it, building blue networks. So again, being in finance places you in such an unique place in the organization where you forced to communicate, to build relationships across the entire organization and beyond it, right? Internal stakeholders, external stakeholders. So what I mean by blue network is really building the connections in between the silos of different functions, and then using that connection to give benefit to others. For instance, if one department is not talking with another department and you have connection with both of them, then you can be the bridge between those two. You kind of broadcast. And now that suddenly the department that says, oh, you're finance, you're useless. No, maybe I can get something from that other guy in that other department where there is a Chinese wall between them, and I can be that connector and I can help them to build that connection. And I think that maybe came to me kind of natural because I wanted to build the really human-to-human relationship with people I work with and really empathetically understand what really worries them and try to solve their problem. After all, people not here to for you to tell them what to do. They have their own problems, own concerns. So if you position yourself from the perspective, okay, how can I help you? Right? And how can I help other person? And then think about, okay, by helping these two guys, how can I create some value for the company overall? Suddenly it results in that value that you are looking for. So that's probably where it is. And I try to carry it across my different roles that I occupied.
It's like creating synergies and just bringing people together in a way. And I feel like, to be honest with you, as a finance recruiter, finance and accounting recruiter, I do find that most finance and accounting people are quite introverted. They're numbers people. Being a numbers person, you're not I'm not saying it's either one or the other, but generally speaking, if your mind is mathematical, which is a brilliant thing, my mind is not mathematical at all. Having a mathematical mind, I think, is a bit different than having an artistic mind, right? And an artistic mind of like social behaviors and all these things. So these are things that you need to work on, as a finance and accounting professional, because of just the way that the brain works in a way. Let's say, like my brain doesn't work like that. I look at an Excel sheet and I don't see anything, right? I just see a bunch of numbers. I don't understand it. I'm terrible at those things. But a finance person can look at these numbers and make a whole story, right? And they can see the story right there. And I think that is communicating the story is a different situation altogether from that end. But yeah, I find finance and accounting professional mostly to be quite introverted, just like yourself, like how with that test that you were talking about,
Yeah. So look, I think you are spot on. What is really what you mentioned about telling the stories, right? So the person who knows the numbers not necessarily can make the story out of those numbers. So that is a skill in itself. So you may understand the number, but can you make a story out of that number? And can you deliver that story, that recipient of that story can relate to it, right? And can connect to you, because I think the problem here is really very often, and especially you can see it with individual contributor, people who are maybe not at a manager level yet, they would be so much in the numbers, as you say, so they would be flooded by that information, by data. And I was like that, and I'm maybe sometimes still like that. I want to grab every single detail in data, and I want to give that data to whoever is listening to me. And I believe it's so important to really, but there is this small thing, please consider that as well, But that can make people who listen to you bored, And that's where you can lose your audience, right? So you need to understand who is your audience, what they are looking for, and what they want to hear from you. And from there, you build up the story. And is it easy? No way. Am I already at the level where I can say that I can do that? Also, probably not. I'm learning it as I go. And I don't think there is a ceiling of perfection in that, But I think it is really important to go out and to be able to speak not only the story about the numbers, which is, as I said, is important, but also to build a connection on a human level, right? To relate to people and try to look, and again, how you can do that, again, if you are not very good and you are not very good in building a relationship and you are not like the party guy and you are the first guy to come, okay, then maybe focus on, okay, how can I help somebody? How can I help this person, right? And when you focus on, instead of focusing on what is important to you, you are focusing on what is important to that person, then you will get that person on board, and then this relationship will build organically, even if you're an introvert, even if you are you are not getting along very well with people. Just keeping that in mind, adding value to someone.
Give before you take, basically.
Probably. And maybe you don't even expect anything in return from that person, not always.
So what was next for you? So you were in this oil and gas company. This is still in Ukraine, right? It was still in Kiev.
Exactly, yeah.
What was the next move, like, after that?
I got married, and then the war started. And it was not the war that now everyone knows that was in 24th of February 2022, but it was in 2014 when the Crimea was annexed and when the war started on the eastern part of Ukraine. My parents, I was not living with my parents at that time. They got a notice for me to go and fight on the war. And as I said, I just got married, and I thought, okay, I had quite a good job where I was, but we decided on a family level.
Chairwoman. Yeah.
It is not. Yeah, my wife is my CEO and chairman, but at the same time, I have equal vote. Right. So again, that was a pure chance, which probably was built up from whatever was in the before. Yeah. I got an offer from Nigeria to go and work there in local Nigerian.
How did that happen? Why? Like.
Honestly, till now, I'm not sure how. I just got a call from Dubai, and there was a recruiter working for a Nigerian company calling me. There is a vacancy in Nigeria. You need to relocate. But by the way, it's a single contract, right? So you don't bring your family. Would you like to go? And then I decided. I had a chat with my executive council, and we came to the conclusion that it would be safer for me to be in Nigeria than to be in Ukraine at that time, because that's how I saw my future. I wanted to be in a safe place with my family. I wanted to bring up kids in a place where where there is no war. Again, Nigeria is not that place, but for me, we had a long-term strategy to get out from Ukraine and to end up in some place which is safe. And in our opinion, that was UAE. So UAE wasn't planned. However, going directly from Ukraine to UAE was probably quite a sharp move. So having some record in my CV about the Nigeria would be actually much more beneficial in the face of my potential recruiter in UAE. So that's how we decided, okay, go. And then off I went on my plane, Kiev-Lagos, at the age of 25.
Wow. And did you manage to get like family relocated, or was it just you that went, or like what was the...
It was only me. So I was on a rotational contract. It was 6 weeks on, 2 weeks off, even though I was a financial controller there. But everyone, all the expats, we had about 150 expats there. And 1,500 Nigerians were working. It was a shipyard and EPC construction. business. So all the expats were on the rotational basis. So every 6 weeks I was flying home or somewhere else. So I was buying, company was buying ticket for me. I was buying ticket to my wife, and we were flying to Bangkok or Barcelona or New York, meeting, traveling, and then going back. She had her own life there, professional, successful. I had my own professional, successful life. We didn't have kids at that time, so that worked quite well.
And how was I would assume that there was like a massive, I don't know what to call it, culture shock or culture difference, like Ukraine, Nigeria. I mean, how was that for you? I'm sure you used a lot of different skills, or you developed a lot of different skills during that part.
Very honest, in my first months there in Nigeria, I was literally sitting and poking myself. Is it really happening with me? Am I really here in Nigeria? Is it all true? So I couldn't believe that. And obviously, as you mentioned, I traveled. I love to travel before I went to Nigeria, but I never been to Africa, and I never lived anywhere outside of Ukraine, and I never worked outside of Ukraine, like prolonged. So that was indeed a big cultural shock, and I think that's where you have to do something. You cannot be yourself there. I mean, very often we just go with the flow. Wherever, if we are in Ukraine, you just continue doing what you do. You have your neuron connection, and they shoot, and then you just do what you used to do. So here you're like, boom,
different.
Okay,
everything.
What do I do? How do I? Everything is different, though the finance is the same, IFRS is the same, so, okay, fine. So then you kind of...
One comfortable area.
Okay, I still know my stuff. Okay, let's work around that, right? And I still can relate to the people, right? And they are the same people. We all the same. This is the same IFRS. This is the same companies and problems in the companies that you have. So, okay, you then grab some base, but then you start doing things differently and solving different problems, because then you really need to blend, you really need to, what it was easy for me to get a connection with a senior accountant, with a chief accountant in Ukraine. Here it's different, right? Because these people have different values, they are a bit different, so you will have to adjust yourself. And this agility, flexibility builds that broadened view where you don't take, okay, this is right, this is wrong. Now you can say, okay, there is no right or wrong, there is this and there is that, and then how do you find yourself in between those two, you know? So you have to explore and you have to work on yourself. So I think that was really a benefit there.
Yeah, I mean, putting yourself in these kind of situations is what teaches you, you know, so many things, you know. We had that discussion before about being uncomfortable and doing things that are uncomfortable maybe at the start, but that's how you grow and that's how you learn a lot of things. So yeah, I think that's probably a part that taught you a lot. And then after that, you came to the UAE. Was it after Nigeria that you came to the UAE? How did that happen, and like why? I know you said it was part of the plan anyway, like from the start.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
So basically, pretty much when I came to Nigeria, probably with my honesty, half year after, I start exploring the market, right, and understanding how can I get there. And that was a long journey. So it literally took me 1.5 years to land my job in UAE. And and again, it was not kind of the goal. I was not really desperate. So I think the important part here is that you need to build your network when you don't need it, which I think is important, because very often we like, I'm fired. What do I do now? Let me see who are my friends. And so we start kind of thinking about this stuff only, or I need to do a job search, or I need to do, I mean, you don't need to do a job search. You just need to be aware and open and transparent, and when you don't really, maybe even when you don't need it, right? And that, and it doesn't mean that you will move. It just gives you that comfort that you can do that move, right? But it took me what it took me, right? It took me 1.5 years, and by the end of my contract, my company didn't want to let me go, even though the oil prices were, it was 2017, 16, 17, the oil prices were collapsing, oil gas, all the capex were shut, so our company shrinked in Nigeria significantly. From 150 expats, there were only 30 left. But they wanted me to stay. And they offered me a family contract. We will bring your wife there. But with all fairness, you don't want to bring your wife to Nigeria. It was not an option. And it was already enough for us. So I was lucky enough to land a job with National Marine Dredging Company at that point of time as a finance manager. Again, I didn't fly high. Fine, I move out, I land my job, and then I start building up my new credibility in a different environment.
Yeah, I mean, from that role, I guess finance manager to CFO, and you're a very young CFO, to be fair, right? I think there's a lot that, took part in that. And this is something I was telling you right before we started the episode, that the reality is, like, if we look at the big four, for example, there is a set number of partners, and underneath that there's like big teams. Not everybody's going to make it to that one position or that partnership position. I think similarly in a finance function, there is one CFO, then there's a group CFO on top of that, fine, but there's usually one CFO and then the whole finance team. And I really want to drill down on what is special about that one person who's the CFO that they are doing that maybe someone the rest of the team is not doing. This is now going from individual contributor to someone that is playing as part of a team at a more senior level, right? Because making that jump for you, I'm guessing there was a lot that came into play.
This is very good but very difficult question, to be honest. And I think if you put 100 people next to you, you will have 100 answers. Yeah. So there is no kind of the only answer there. I can tell about my road and what choices I was making. So in particular, joining as a finance manager in NMDC, at that point of time, NMDC was not a big company relatively. It was maybe 1 billion dirham turnover company. We were transforming the company a lot because it was really an old school way of doing business, and we were bringing the new standards and implementing new processes. So it was really kind of a transformational, let's put it this way. But what I kept doing. And one thing that I keep emphasizing, so couple of years, 1.5 years after I joined NMDC, I went again for study, right? And then this time, I realized that technical knowledge, I'm quite comfortable already, right? So I needed something different. So I looked for something bigger, big shot. And I found INSEAD, right, Executive MBA. And again, maybe I could have chosen something different, but I wanted to go to one of the best, yeah? And to be honest, I wanted to sponsor this study by myself. So I had all my savings, whatever I earned in Nigeria, whatever savings I accumulated to date, again, on our family council, we agreed, okay, we go for it. I invested in myself again. We invested in my education. Again, in hindsight, I think this is the investment worth doing in my case. Because, again, some people say, oh, you need to calculate IRR or payback for this investment. But you don't. And I just want to, again, the continuous education is extremely important. And I give you a very small example. Before the war started, I made a small investment in construction of apartment in Kiev, in Ukraine, and then the war started. And then I don't really know what will happen with that investment. But when you do investment in your education, no one can take out this from you. You will die, and then you will take it with you. So you will look at all kind of investments that are available there on the market. Probably this is the only investment that is secure, that you can really
keep forever.
Keep forever, exactly. Again, how do you capitalize on that? That's a different topic. You may have two examples where one succeed, one will not succeed. So again, there is a bit of luck there as well. But, I have my favorite saying, the more I practice, the luckier I get. So I think this is true to my story as well, to a certain extent. But luck was there. But basically, coming back to my story, I started MBA, and then suddenly there was a big transaction that came on the ground, and I was working with my CEO, my CFO. They both become group CEO and group CFO. After the transaction, it was actually a big reverse merger, $1 billion transaction. Pretty much one of a kind transaction in the market. Again, did I have any experience in reverse merger? No. There are not many people who have that experience at all. If you just go to consultants or whoever, they also kind of learn this, right? Because it's not very common transaction. Though in UAE there were a couple of them. So I was I was lucky, you may say lucky here, that this transaction fall on me at the time when I was doing my INSEAD. So I said, okay, let's open my books. Yeah. Let's assign to the right courses. And then I just started bringing insights to my CEO, to my CFO, and adding value to them, helping them to deal with this transaction and generating the value out of that transaction. Subsequently, when I was, so what we've done the merger, we've done post-merger integration, and I was lucky enough to be able to draw the org structure of the consolidated entity where we were combining finance of two entities. It was NMDC acquiring NPCC through reverse merger, through share swap. So we were building one finance team for these two entities. And I put myself literally, okay, Oleg, we need to prepare org structure for this company. I put myself as a corporate finance director. I said, okay, that's where I belong. And that org structure went in, you know. So again, with all the efforts I put, probably that's what brought me to that position. But again, the important part here, and I always tell it to my colleagues, my employees who I work with, that if you want a promotion, you first need to act as if you're already promoted. And then the role comes. You cannot ask, I want to be a manager, sitting and doing nothing as a manager, being an individual contributor and saying, it's not mine, it's not my responsibility, I don't want to this. And so you already have to become a manager. You already have to become a director before you become a director.
Yeah, I agree. You need to make the role that is upcoming, you know, you need to be in that shoes already, and then it's yours. I think that's a really good way, a good mindset to be in to achieve that, right? Let's talk a little bit about, you know, you were speaking a little bit about knowledge capital, and I think it was social capital, which I think was a very interesting thing that you discussed with me about. So I think it's happened during your MBA as well, kind of like that discussion around what it is. Can you explain to our listeners like what that is as well?
In the early time of your career, your knowledge capital is extremely important. And if you look at it, it would be basically two triangles. If you have a chart, you will have a knowledge capital. So you will have an x-axis, which is your time of your career. Starting from here is the beginning of your career, finishing here, end of your career. So in the beginning of your career, and the y-axis is the importance of some kind of capital. So in the beginning of the career, the most important capital is your knowledge capital. As you move forward towards the end of your career, your knowledge capital importance is going down. What I mean by that, so it's not really that important being a CFO, knowing everything about what is IFRS 15, what is, how do you do activity-based costing and all that stuff. It's good if you know that, it's good that you can operate that, but then that will not necessarily give you the job. But what becomes important while you move towards your career is your social capital. It's another triangle that becomes bigger, 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 and pretty much it becomes the most important thing while you, in the later stage of your career, is your social capital. And what do you mean by social capital? Is your emotional intelligence, is how can you work with other people? How can you manage other people? So what I found for myself, really probably the most, what was the most difficult thing in my career was really a paradigm shift from individual contributor to a manager. So when you become a manager, you have to start thinking differently, totally. Again, am I there as I am sitting here? Also, no, for sure. because I think that part of social capital and the way you manage people, the way you lead people, the way you interact with other people, there is no ceiling, again, of mastery. So you can go forever and improve yourself. But that's something that will open the door, right? So you need to understand that it's not the same. Now, one of the problems that I used to have is that I'm a perfectionist. I want everything done perfect, and if I don't like things, I'm jumping in and I will do it myself. But that's what keeps you away from becoming a manager. What you need to do is, when you're a manager, you need to do it with the help of others. You have a team to do that. And for that, you need to trust your team. You need to empower your team. You need to develop your team. And here the fun part comes again, which I face a lot in Nigeria and in other circumstances, is that people, they are so scared of giving out their knowledge to others. And why? Because they think, if I tell this guy how I'm doing this tricky thing that only I know how to do, then they will not need me, they will fire me. So what I will do, I will never teach this guy how to do that. And that's how I have my job security. What you are doing, you're basically putting handcuffs between you and the position you occupy. There is no way for you to move forward because no one else can do it. Why? How can I promote you and move you to manager, director, if I don't have anyone to do what you're doing? And this is a fallacy, really interesting fallacy that many people fall into, saying that actually things that will make them succeed, they think that that's what will grab their job from them. And this is a big fallacy, right? And I think we need to look into that, and we need to be open, and we need to... So my job in Nigeria, for instance, was to... And I set the goal. I want to make my role in Nigeria redundant. My job is to make sure that they can do it, yeah? And if they can do it without me, then my job is done. That may ultimately mean that I will move out, which happened, but I was going for that anyway, right? But now coming back to any next job, let's say in an MDC, I was finance manager. Now if I want to become finance director, I need someone to take the role of finance manager. So you can go and hire on the market finance manager. But again, I don't believe that this can be good in transformations and when you need to do turnaround, when you really need to make a sharp turn of the vessel, right? But normally you have to build up the talent within the company, because that will motivate them. You will get the feedback immediately from the team when they see that you're investing in them, and you will get more in return. So that's something that I was keen doing, right? If I want to move forward, I need someone to do my job. And that's why I want you, in particular, I want you to do what I'm doing now. This is my job, so I can move on.
Yeah, 100%. It's a tough thing, definitely, management, in my opinion. I think it's a very, very tough thing. But, the social capital side of things play a very big part. So, what would you suggest? So if there's someone right now that's listening to this, that's like, okay, I really need to work on my social capital. I really need to work on, all that empathy, the soft skill side of things. I need to come out and, do all of these things. Like, what are the things that you would say, this is what you need to work on to build a little bit more? And maybe you don't have all the answers, but maybe one or two things that you worked on helped you build your social capital.
Let me break it down a little bit. So there are a couple of things, right? One was one particular event, which was my EMBA from INSEAD. That was for me a transformative experience, end to end. That's where I actually realized that who I am. And what I can do. And I also saw other people who are very bright and talented. And that's where I figured out that I'm actually not worse off because I have that self-doubt and self-criticism where maybe, I'm not as good as them. That's why maybe I don't deserve this, right? So this is one big transformation that happened. And one of the things that, again, that executive MBA program, again, I'm not advertising here. I'm just telling you my story which may not be applicable to someone else. But one thing that was there, so there was other than curriculum and syllabus that will cover your, again, knowledge capital, I don't know, macroeconomics, microeconomics, politics, statistics, operations, LPO, you name it, organizational behavior, which is one of my favorite subjects. This is all important, but then you also go through the journey of self-realization, where you meet yourself and you realize who you are, right? And this is what is important. And now I will give an advice to our beloved audience. Guys, you have to realize yourself. And it will sound a little bit of a white noise. So again, what happened with me, and again, not necessarily that will work with someone else, but when I was in INSEAD, we had such thing as a leadership development coaching and leadership development program across the entire program, where we work with the coaches and we work in the team, and we try to like in a safe environment where we coach each other, and we get coaching from the coach as well. So that's the important part. And from here, let me just put a link. If you want, and if you can, try to get a coach for yourself, right? Try to find someone who would be willing to give away his experience and knowledge and help you to realize yourself, you know? So again, this is one of the most precious things that you can get, and many people don't get it, but that's something that you probably want to focus on. Who can be that person, kind of the role model, if you want, that can help you. But on the other hand, when this coaching happened, what I realized that I'm not able to go as deep as I need to go in certain issues that we were discussing. And that's where, frankly, I realized that I need to have a side exercise on my own therapy. And that's where I started my therapy. And I thought, okay, so we cover leadership from the floor till here, till my neck, but then we will not go underwater fully. So I needed that one extra step. And another advice that worked very well for me, and to many of my friends who I advise after that, is personal therapy. Because a therapist is the only person in your life who genuinely cares about you. So you have your friends, you have your wife, you have your parents, you have your colleagues at work. All of them has their personal life and personal agenda in whatever interaction they have with you. So the therapist, and it has to be a good one, is the only person whose job you pay him for that or her for that, to be only interested in you, right? And the only focus is about you. So that's how you can really understand yourself better and deeper. And that's what actually helped me a lot. And again, I haven't done that yet. I'm still in the journey. And I think that we all have to do that in our life. Even if we succeeded, we still have to do it. Because it's not only the business issues. It comes, I don't know, from your childhood, from your relationship with your parents, relationship with your wife. It's all connected. And it's magically how sometimes you come to this insight that, oh, this situation that happens with my parents, actually similar thing happens with this my colleague, you know? Oh, this situation, how I perceive myself, actually in some environment, public environment, or under stress, this is exactly what happens with me at work, you know? So you can connect these dots, and you don't need to talk with your therapist about your work necessarily. You can really talk about some really ground things about your relationship, about your fears.
Stuff, yeah.
But then it magically somehow impacts your behavior at work.
Yeah, I mean, if you really think about it, we spend, between 10 to 12 hours at work. It's a lot, right? of course, everything that we are going through beyond that is affecting that. That's a very significant time. It's not like we are there for 1 or 2 hours. And I do think it's a powerful exercise to do for self-realization. I mean, a lot of us go about our lives thinking about our career and thinking about developing all these things for our career. But actually, in the back end of it, it's like everything we do in our lives is interconnected and related to that, you know? If, you can understand and have the self-realization about yourself, then you can conduct your meetings better. You can conduct yourself everywhere better. At meetings, board meetings, whatever that is there, you can really conduct yourself much better from that self-realization. But it's a never-ending journey, in my opinion. I think it's something that is so complicated, and it's something that you will have to do forever.
100%. I mean, I couldn't say better than what you said, right? This is exactly the point. It is a extremely hard work. And this win is the hardest win in your life. Becoming CFO is not as difficult as understanding your own self, understanding your strengths, your weaknesses, accepting yourself the way you are, allowing yourself be the way you are. And when that happens, it just opens some resource that you block and lock through your everyday interaction with the people around you. So how can you unpack that tremendous value and bring it towards your job, towards your relationship with your wife, family? It is all connected. But this is the value that we must tap in. It would be foolish not to uncover that value, right? And I strongly believe that there is a lot of value that we, just because of our convictions, beliefs, we don't realize these things. It's on a background. We don't even think. We think everything is fine. We are fine. But and it's not that you're not fine. It's just that you can be better.
Yeah. That's a very good way to put it. Yeah, I love this episode. I feel like it's super insightful, and I think we talked about things that maybe most people are afraid or don't talk about really, but I think we should speak about these things a lot more, because the reality is we're all experiencing the same thing as human beings, right? That's one common experience between all of us. We could all have different backgrounds and lives, but we are all experiencing life, and that is what we're all doing, right? So yeah, I think that's quite powerful, and I hope, this episode was very insightful for all our listeners. I'm going to end this in a very light note. I'm going to ask you about, I'm sure, you kept talking about continuous education and learning and stuff like that. I'm sure you read a lot. What's on your reading list? Like, let's just say top 1 or 2 or whatever that comes to your mind. What's on your reading list?
We're talking about business literature. I would definitely recommend number of books. 2 books from Erin Meyer. He's a professor of INSEAD. She wrote Culture Map and No Rules Rules. Again, one is about the how do you act in the multicultural environment, and how do you position yourself, and where are your culture compared to other culture, which is relative. Another one is No Rules Rules is about, so Erin Meyer wrote it with the CEO of Netflix, about their corporate culture. Extremely interesting how, again, it may not be entirely applicable to all the business that is there, the principles that they apply in the Netflix, but definitely there are some toolkits that you can get in. And another one, probably I will recommend Charlie Galunik, Background Leadership. This is another one of my favorite professor in INSEAD. He's doing organizational behavior, OB, which for me probably is the most complicated subject. And again, the subject that there is no ceiling. You cannot reach the mastery of what is it to be a leader. And it's also linked with a strategy. So really insightful toolkit. So probably that would be my recommendations.
And for our final question, so Bartender goes to becoming, you said professional skier, you were skiing, going to CFO. But like, let's just imagine you never really became a CFO and that's not the path you took. What would you have become, or what do you think you would have been?
Let's open our dreams up. Look, I think Probably I may have become a scientist, and in particular in physics or in space. I'm very passionate about the rule of the nature, because again, finance is something artificial. If there is no current setup and existing relationship in the humanity, business relationship, then probably finance will not exist. It's only kind of the story. However, physics always there, right? We sit here because of physics.
Yes.
Yeah, and also I'm extremely passionate about space, because what we understand about Earth, but what we don't understand about the cosmos and about the planets, probably I would invest my time into really getting deep and understanding those principles better, to know the life around me better.
Very interesting. In another life.
No, why? Maybe
after this.
I can.
After.
It will come. It will come. So never the end, right? So again, I just don't have time now. Enough time to invest in this. Maybe after I retire or whatever, I can do that. Not to earn money, just for myself.
Look, thank you so much for being here. I think that episode was amazing. I thank all our listeners for listening to Alchemy
Thank you very much.
Uncensored. Please follow us on all our social media, Apple Music and Spotify and YouTube if you want to see the video for this as well. Thank you so much for listening in, and see you on the next episode.
Thank you very much, Ram.